You wake into a morning that feels like it belongs to everyone but you. Before your feet find the ground, the phone vibrates with messages, plans, and the low hum of other people's lives seeping into yours. There is no villain here, only a pattern you rarely name. The gradual outsourcing of your inner world to the ambient chatter of others. In quiet moments, a peculiar weariness rises, not from physical exhaustion, but from the subtle erosion that happens when you are never truly alone with your thoughts. Deep down, you sense that something important is being compromised, yet you can't quite articulate it. The mystery lives at the edges of your awareness, a sense that your own mind is growing thin, stretched across too many conversations, too many rooms, too many smiles. You go on because socializing is supposed to be medicine, but an old, unspoken question lingers. What if the cure you've been prescribed is slowly dulling the person it is meant to heal? You remember a time when the voices around you were few, when silence was a familiar friend rather than an awkward void. In childhood, you sat beneath trees and let your mind wander, creating entire worlds from the sound of wind in leaves. As the years accumulated, the space for those worlds dwindled, friendships multiplied, networking became a necessity, and your calendar filled with obligations that felt like lifelines to sanity. At first it seemed healthy, a sign that you were loved and connected. Parties, group chats, and endless meetups pulled you into a swirl that blurred into all hours of day and night. You laughed when you were supposed to laugh, nodded at the appropriate places, and told yourself that fullness equated to meaning. You rarely questioned the cost, because loneliness is a monster with teeth, and the wisdom of the crowd is comfort. But in the privacy of your own mind, a different feeling grew, an ache for the depth you once found in solitude. There is a moment during every conversation when your mind drifts. It happens as someone recounts their weekend or the latest workplace drama, and you suddenly sense your own absence. Your face still smiles, your head tilts with empathy, but inside, a hollow opens. You know every social script, every courteous interjection, every small joke designed to lubricate the machinery of human connection. Yet these scripts leave no room for the quiet questions that define you. Instead, you are entertained, informed, and endlessly distracted. A thought tries to surface, a fragile line of inquiry about what you truly love or fear, but it dissolves under the weight of needing to respond on cue. Hours later, you might recall that something important was lost. You might not recall anything at all. There are days when the voice in your head doesn't sound like yours. It's a composite voice, pieced together from the opinions of co-workers, the anxieties of friends, the triumphs and tragedies of strangers you follow online. It is no longer a single current, but a dozen threads of commentary, analysis, judgment. You begin to notice how quickly you say we instead of I. You notice that your preferences adapt to those of the people around you, that your jokes and references shift depending on who is listening. At first, this feels like adaptability, a social grace that allows you to belong. But underneath is a subtle displacement. Your inner compass is calibrated by external magnets. The boundaries between your mind and others blur, and with that blurring goes the clarity that once guided you. You wonder what you would think if you were left to think on your own. That question frightens you more than you care to admit. There is science behind this phenomenon, but you feel it long before you read about it. The brain mirrors those around it. Mirror neurons fire when someone laughs, yawns, cries, gets angry. Empathy is built into the hardware, But when the mirroring never ceases, the reflection never ends. In crowds, your nervous system remains on alert. You scan faces, interpreting expressions, adjusting your tone, interpreting subtext. Each encounter leaves micro-imprints on your nervous system. These imprints accumulate. It becomes harder to drop into deep thought because your mental energy is used to maintain the constant dance of social reciprocity. Conversations that begin light-hearted become obligations, and your day becomes a chain of interactions that leaves no space for recovery. You are human, wired for connection, but also wired for contemplative spaces where the noise can settle. You cannot remain in an ongoing state of social arousal without losing something essential. You might argue that socializing is nourishment, and you wouldn't be wrong. There are moments when a friend's voice saves you from despair, when laughter with family keeps you from forgetting who you are. Humans have survived because we belong to each other. But nourishment has a rhythm. Hunger comes, food is eaten, and then there is digestion. Imagine eating all day without rest. Your stomach would revolt. Imagine listening to music without a pause between songs. The melody would lose its meaning, yet you expect your mind to be always open for company. When you go to bed, you take your phone with you, letting other people's thoughts be the last thing you ingest. You wake up and consume news and updates before your own consciousness has fully arrived. You shower while listening to podcasts, commute while responding to messages, work in an office where the hum of conversation never stops. You never truly digest anything because there is always something new to consume. Slowly, your capacity for deep thinking diminishes. You skim the surface of ideas and feelings. Even your memories become thinner because memory relies on quiet, on the mental filing that happens when you are alone. If you pay attention, you might notice that your creativity has changed. Where you once could sit and write or draw for hours, now you struggle to concentrate for minutes. Where you once lost yourself in the silence of a book, now your eyes flicker back to the screen to see who has commented on your latest post. It is as if your mind has been trained to expect interruption. The moment things grow challenging or still, you feel compelled to reach out. This compulsion feels like a need for connection, but it also functions as an escape from the discomfort of your own thoughts. Socializing becomes a refuge from introspection. You tell yourself you are being supportive or informed, but beneath that is an avoidance of the parts of you that have become neglected. In the absence of others, your own loneliness surfaces, and that is harder to face than any awkward silence in a group. You have always been told that extroversion is rewarded. The world loves people who can entertain, network, charm. Quietness is misunderstood as sadness or arrogance, and so you push yourself to be present everywhere, to be known, to be liked. At first, the external validation is intoxicating. Each invitation is a sign that you matter. Each like on your photo feels like a hug. But eventually, you reach a tipping point where the feedback loop becomes burdensome. You realize that much of your social life is maintenance, checking in, keeping up, showing up. The actual depth of these interactions varies wildly. You might spend an evening surrounded by people and leave feeling emptier than when you arrived. It is not that the people are bad. It's that the conversation never reaches the level where you feel nourished. Instead, you are satiated in the way fast food satiates. The pleasure is immediate. The aftertaste is a film you can't wash away. Occasionally, you escape to nature or to a room where no one needs anything from you. The first hours are restless. Your fingers twitch toward your phone. You feel the urge to share this moment of silence with someone else, to translate it into a post, a story. But if you sit with the discomfort and let it unfold, something unexpected happens. The constant buzzing in your body begins to quiet. Thoughts you had suppressed for weeks begin to surface. At first, they are petty. What that person said at lunch, whether you should have responded differently in a meeting. Then, deeper currents appear. An old dream you abandoned, a sadness you haven't named, a joy that catches you off guard. You begin to notice the texture of your own breath, the way light changes across the wall, the subtle rhythm of your heartbeat. These observations are not profound in themselves, but the act of witnessing them is. It reminds you that there is a world inside you as rich as any conversation. In fact, your capacity to be present with others is directly proportional to your capacity to be present with yourself. When you re-enter the social world after such a pause, you might notice your tolerance for small talk diminishes. You crave depth. You find yourself listening more than speaking, not because you are uninterested, but because you can now tell when someone is speaking from their surface and when they are speaking from their depths. You might spend less time in large gatherings and more time in conversations that stretch into the night. You might let go of relationships that thrive on constant contact but never truly see you. This may look like withdrawal to others. They might worry you are becoming antisocial. But what is actually happening is a reclamation of your own mind. You are choosing to invest your attention where it can grow rather than scatter. It is not easy to change. The fear of missing out is powerful. The dread of being alone runs deep. There will be days when you call a friend because you don't want to face your own thoughts, and that is okay. Connection is not an all or nothing equation, but perhaps you can begin to notice when your socializing is nourishment and when it is a buffer against something more uncomfortable. You can notice when your mind feels drained after an interaction and when it feels alive. You can practice telling yourself that it is okay to not answer immediately, to let messages pile up, to miss an event. You can remind yourself that your worth is not measured by your availability. This is not a manifesto against friendship or community. It is a recognition that your mind is a finite space with infinite potential, and it requires tending. It needs silence as much as it needs conversation. It needs solitude not as a punishment, but as a garden where your own ideas and feelings can take root. The erosion you feel is not inevitable. It is a result of never giving yourself time to settle, to integrate, to dream. If you can sit in a room alone and feel the fullness of being alive, then your socializing will no longer be an escape, but a choice. It will be something you enter with your whole self, knowing that you can return to your inner world whenever you need. In that way, socializing stops being a slow leak in your mind and becomes a bridge between the world inside you and the world around you. The question that has haunted you from the beginning, what if the cure is dulling you, begins to dissolve. The real issue is not that socializing destroys your mind, but that unending, unreflective socializing does. You have more control than you think. You can choose when to engage and when to retreat. You can cultivate a rhythm that honors both your communal nature and your individual soul. And at the end of each day, when the phone is off and the room is dark, you can finally hear the voice that has been waiting, your own.